Moonshiners episode. Narrative about Mark and Digger confronting Mike after he allegedly detonated their still, in the style of a dramatic yet grounded title. Boom in the hollow. The morning haze clung low to the Appalachian hills like a secret too heavy to lift. Mist swirled through the trees, curling around the rusted skeleton of what used to be a copper still. The scent of burnt sugar mash and scorched pine still lingered in the air. Mark Rogers crouched near the charred remains, a hand on his worn cap, his expression dark. Digger Maines stood over him, jaw tight, arms crossed, and his thick beard twitching every time he sucked in breath through his nose. "She blew sky high," he muttered, like someone stuffed a 4th of July final right up her spout. Mark looked up. "Ain't no accident, Digger. You and I both know that still didn't blow itself up." Digger nodded grimly. "No, sir. Someone wanted to send a message. And I got a real good idea who." Mark rose slowly, brushing soot off his jeans. Mike. Mike Caldwell wasn't a stranger in these parts. Once a protege to the older Moonshiners, he had the enthusiasm of a hound dog in a squirrel pen, but lately his ambition had turned sour. He'd been running his own side gig, stepping on toes, getting bold. Reckless. "You remember what he said at the auction last month?" Digger asked as they trudged back to the truck. "Talkin' all that noise about takin' over the holler, bringin' in new equipment, new recipes. He got dreams bigger than his britches." Mark nodded. "Well, he might have just turned those dreams into a declaration of war." Later that afternoon, with the mountains turning orange in the late-day sun, Mark and Digger pulled up to a gravel lot outside an old sawmill where Mike had been setting up shop. His silver pickup was parked outside, music blaring from within the open garage bay. Mike stood under the flickering fluorescent light, grinning, pouring something into a barrel. He looked up as the two older men approached, his smile fading like a switch flipped off. Well, Mike said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Heard something went bang last night. Y'all alright?" Digger stepped forward, his voice low but hot. "Don't play dumb with us, Mike." That still was one of a kind. Handmade. 30 years of tradition gone in a fireball. Mike chuckled, nervously. "Now why would I do something like that, Digger?" "Ain't I learned everything I know from y'all?" Mark cut in, voice like gravel. "Because you think this is a game. You want to skip to the front of the line without paying your dues. You want to take what ain't yours." Mike dropped the rag. "I don't need to blow up a still to get ahead. I got better methods." Digger's eyes narrowed. "Funny, because only 3 people knew where that still was. Me, Mark, and you." For a moment, the room held its breath. "I got nothing to do with that," Mike said, jaw clenching. "But if y'all are feeling threatened, maybe it's 'cause you know I'm running a cleaner operation. Modern, safer, more efficient." "That ain't the point, boy," Mark said. "This ain't just about shine. It's about how it's done. About respect, for the craft, and for the people who brought you up." "You think this is respect?" Mike snapped, pointing a finger at them. "You've been holding me back. Always saying, 'Not yet,' or 'Wait your turn.'" "Well, maybe I just made my own turn." Digger stepped in close, his boots grinding against the concrete floor. "If you did do it, and I ain't saying for sure, but if you did, this ain't over, Mike." That still meant something. It was like a piece of family. Mike's eyes flicked between them, something unreadable behind his glare. "Then maybe it's time to start a new family." The confrontation left the air crackling like static. As Mark and Digger drove back down the mountain, silence hung between them like smoke. "You think he did it?" Mark asked finally. Digger sighed. "I think he's too proud to admit it, and too stupid to cover his tracks." But I also think we ain't the only ones he's rubbed raw. They pulled off at a bait shack near the creek to ask around. Word travels fast in Appalachia, especially when fire and betrayal are involved. Old Lenny, the local fixer, leaned on the tailgate of his truck and whistled low when he heard the story. Heard Mike was down at the feed store 2 days ago, Lenny said. Buying ammonium nitrate and diesel. Said it was for field work. You ever known Mike to so much as plant a tomato? Digger's eyes lit up. Well, I'll be damned. He built a bomb. Mark nodded grimly. And now he's got to answer for it. They waited for nightfall. By 10 o'clock, Mark and Digger were deep in the woods near Mike's new still site. It was a prefab setup, all stainless steel and digital gauges. But what they were looking for wasn't shine, it was justice. A faint light flickered through the trees. Mike was there, alone, fiddling with his condenser coil, humming a country tune. Mark stepped into the clearing, flashlight snapping on, spinning around. What the hell? Davis stepped behind him, calm and slow. We had a talk, now we need the truth. I told you all, I didn't touch your still, Mike said, backing toward his truck. Mark tossed something at his feet, a scorched metal tag, the only thing left of their old burner. Then explain how this got found under your tool bench, right next to residue from the blast. Mike's face turned pale. That ain't mine. Circled him. You brought this on yourself. You wanted a seat at the table, and instead you flipped it over. You don't scare me, Mike said, voice cracking. I got my own operation now. I don't need you. No, Mark said. But you need someone. Because out here, you don't last long alone. The silence that followed wasn't threatening, it was final. Mike wasn't just out of the family, he was out of the hollow. 3 days later, word had spread. Mike still was gone. Not blown up, taken apart piece by piece. No fire, no violence, just gone. Stripped clean like the mountain had swallowed it whole. Mark and Digger never admitted to it, and Mike never came back to challenge them. He moved east, rumor had it, trying to set up in Carolina. But nobody there wanted to partner with a man accused of sabotage. His shine never caught on again. As for Mark and Digger, they rebuilt. They found a new spot, deeper in the woods, and crafted a new still from scratch. Better than before, but carrying the same soul. Every piece soldered with memory. Every batch distilled with care. Back to basics, Digger said one morning, watching the first run pour clear as crystal. Mark nodded, the firelight dancing in his eyes. Ain't about how fast you run. It's about how steady you go. They didn't talk about Mike again. The mountains had already taken care of that. Out here, fire might burn fast, but loyalty runs deeper. And in these woods, tradition always outlasts ambition. The Appalachian air was thick with morning fog and the faint smell of smoke. It was the kind of fog that clung to your shirt and made your boots feel heavy. A lonely raven croaked overhead as Mark Rogers stood silently beside a blackened patch of earth deep in the hollow. The still was gone, blown to pieces. Twisted metal was scattered like bones around a crater that used to be their pride and joy. That copper pot, that old thumper, the worm barrel, all of it melted, mangled, destroyed. The trees nearby were scorched. The scent of charred mash hung in the air. Digger Mains stepped out of the woods, his face grave. He crouched beside the wreckage, one gloved hand brushing a piece of cracked copper. Well, he said, voice rough as gravel, either she got struck by Appalachian lightning, or someone wanted us out of the shine game. Mark didn't respond right away. His hands were on his hips, his lips pressed tight. It wasn't no accident, Mark said finally. This was deliberate. Someone set a charge. Digger exhaled slowly through his nose. You think it was Mike? Mark glanced sideways at him. Ain't nobody else knew where this still was. Just you, me, and him. Mike hadn't always been trouble. A couple years back, he'd started out like most, eager to learn, eager to help, hungry for shine knowledge. Mark and Digger had taken him under their wing, taught him the ropes. He was a good worker, smart with numbers, a smooth talker. But somewhere along the way, Mike stopped wanting to learn. He wanted to lead. And that's when things started to change. He'd gone behind their backs, selling shine to bootleggers across the state line, bragging to locals about his up-and-coming brand. Worse, he'd started cutting corners, faster fermentation, cheaper corn, flashier packaging. Mike wanted moonshining to be sexy. Mark and Digger knew better. This wasn't some trend. It was a legacy. The next day, Mark and Digger headed down the ridge into Crabtree Valley, where Mike had been building his own modern operation. Word around town was he'd scored some out-of-town investors and was setting up a stainless steel still with digital temperature control. Fancy, but not right. They pulled up to Mike's barn-style workspace around noon. The smell of fresh mash hung in the air. Mike was outside, adjusting a hose attached to a fermenter, whistling a country tune like he hadn't a care in the world. When he saw the truck, his smile faltered. Mark. Digger. Y'all look like you crawled out of a coal bin, he said, eyes flicking to the soot still on their jeans. Mark got out slowly. We came to talk. Digger stepped beside him. You busy? Or you got time to explain why our still's currently scrap metal in a crater? Mike froze, the hose dribbling onto his boot. I don't know nothing about that. No? Mark asked, stepping closer. You weren't bragging last week at Denny's about how we're dinosaurs and the future's in high-efficiency, small-batch distilling. Mike straightened up, defensive. That was just talk. You old-timers always act like you invented the stuff. Digger's eyes narrowed.